The morning sun painted the ocean in shades of gold as I zipped up my suitcase for what was supposed to be the happiest family vacation we'd taken in years. My name is Claire Bennett. I'm 34 years old, and until that summer, I still believed that no matter how complicated families became, blood would always matter. I couldn't have been more wrong. The trip had been my younger brother Ethan's idea. Mom deserves one perfect vacation, he'd said during Sunday dinner 3 months earlier. 5 days at a luxury beach resort, just the family, no work, no stress. Everyone loved the idea. Our mother smiled for the first time in weeks. My older sister Rachel immediately volunteered to organize the bookings. "You've been working non-stop, Claire," she told me with a warm smile. "Don't worry about anything. I'll handle the reservations." I thanked her without thinking twice. After all, she was my sister. Over the following weeks, our family group chat overflowed with excitement. Photos of palm trees, beach restaurants, sunset cruises, spa packages. Every day someone sent another countdown message. "Only 18 days left. Can't wait. This is going to be unforgettable." Looking back now, one word in those messages should have frightened me. Unforgettable. The morning we left, everyone met outside my mother's house before driving to the coast. 3 SUVs, 8 family members, enough luggage for an entire month. Rachel hugged me tightly. "I'm so glad you came," I smiled. "I wouldn't miss this. If only I'd known." They had already planned for me to miss almost everything. 4 hours later, we pulled into the breathtaking entrance of Ocean Crest Resort, a 5-star beachfront paradise overlooking crystal blue water. The staff welcomed us with cold drinks and warm smiles. For a moment, I felt lucky. Maybe this trip would finally bring our family closer together. Maybe all the arguments from the past few years would disappear beneath the sound of crashing waves. I followed everyone toward the reception desk, suitcase rolling quietly behind me. Rachel stepped forward and handed the receptionist an envelope. The receptionist typed for a few seconds. Then she frowned. She looked at me. "I'm terribly sorry, Ma'am. I can't seem to find a reservation under your name." I smiled politely. There must be a mistake. That's exactly what I believed. A mistake. I had no idea. It was the first step in a plan my own family had been hiding for months. I stood at the reception desk, waiting for the receptionist to smile and say she'd found the missing reservation. Instead, she looked at me with genuine sympathy. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I've checked every booking under the Bennett family." She paused before continuing. "There isn't a room reserved in your name." I laughed nervously. "Maybe it's under my sister's name, Rachel Bennett." The receptionist searched again. After a few moments, she nodded. "Yes, I found the reservation." Relief washed over me. Then she added, "There are 4 ocean view suites reserved." She looked back at the screen. "One for Mrs. Helen Bennett, one for Rachel Bennett and her husband, one for Ethan Bennett, and one family suite for your cousins." She stopped typing. "That's all." I frowned. "What about me?" The receptionist looked confused. "I'm afraid there isn't a room assigned to you." The lobby suddenly felt silent. I turned toward my family, expecting someone to laugh and say it was all a misunderstanding. No one spoke. Rachel slowly avoided my eyes. Ethan suddenly became interested in checking his phone. Even my mother stared at the marble floor. My stomach tightened. "Rachel, you booked everything." She forced an awkward smile. I thought you said you'd book your own room." My eyebrows shot up. "What?" I never said that. You literally told me, "Oh, don't worry, I'll handle everything." Rachel crossed her arms. Well, maybe you misunderstood. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I have the text messages, she shrugged. Then maybe read them again. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands. The family group chat was still there. 3 months of vacation planning. Photos, restaurants, packing lists, countdowns. But something strange caught my attention. Almost every message about reservations had been deleted. Only random conversations remained. I looked at Rachel. "Why are half the messages gone?" She didn't answer. Instead, my mother finally spoke. "Claire, there's no reason to make a scene." A scene? I wasn't making a scene. I was trying to understand why my entire family had arrived at a luxury resort, without a place for me to sleep. The receptionist cleared her throat. "I do have one room available," Hope returned. "It's our last executive suite." Before I could thank her, she quietly added, "The rate is $980 per night." 5 nights, nearly $5,000. I hadn't budgeted for that because I'd been told everything had already been arranged. Rachel sighed dramatically. "See? They have another room. You can just book it." I stared at her. "You knew I wasn't included." She didn't deny it. Instead, she smiled politely. "I honestly didn't think it would be this expensive." That sentence told me everything. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't confusion. Someone had planned this. The question was, why? Before I could say another word, the receptionist's phone rang. She answered politely. After a few seconds, she looked directly at me. "Ma'am, the resort manager would like to speak with you privately." I followed her across the lobby, completely unaware that the next 5 minutes would change far more than my vacation. The receptionist led me through a quiet hallway, lined with framed photographs of the resort's history. Every step felt heavier than the last. My own family had just stood a few feet away, while I discovered they hadn't reserved a room for me. Not one of them had apologized. Not one of them had even looked ashamed. The receptionist stopped outside a large wooden door. She knocked twice. A calm voice answered, "Come in." Inside stood a tall man in his early 50s, wearing a navy blue suit with a silver name badge. Michael Foster, general manager. He stood up and extended his hand. "Miss Bennett, thank you for coming." I shook his hand politely. "I'm sorry you've had such a difficult check-in." I forced a smile. "I'm still trying to understand what happened." He gestured toward a chair. "Please, have a seat." As I sat down, he opened a folder on his desk. "I've reviewed today's reservations. Your family has been staying with us for several years." I nodded. "Yes." He looked at me for a moment before asking something unexpected. "May I ask you a personal question?" I blinked. "Of course." "When your sister made these reservations 3 months ago, did she ever ask us to reserve a room for you?" "I don't know." I assumed she had. Mr. Foster slowly turned his computer monitor toward me. "This is the original reservation request we received." He pointed to the booking notes. I read them carefully. 4 suites, 8 guests. Every guest's name was listed, except mine. I read the list again, then a third time. There was no typing error, no cancellation, no missing page. My name had never been included. I looked up at him. "So, I wasn't forgotten." He shook his head gently. "No." The reservation was submitted exactly this way. For several seconds I couldn't speak. All those weeks, every countdown message, every family discussion, every smile. They had known from the very beginning. Mr. Foster broke the silence. I understand this must be painful. It is. He leaned back in his chair. Normally, I'd simply offer you our last available suite. But after hearing what happened, I'd like to suggest something else. I frowned. What do you mean? He smiled. Our resort has a guest relations program. Occasionally, we invite professionals to evaluate our customer experience. I looked confused. I'm an architect. I've never reviewed hotels. I know. He nodded, but your profession caught my attention. The resort is planning a major renovation next year. We're looking for fresh ideas. He slid a business card across the desk. If you're interested, I'd like to offer you a complimentary ocean view suite. My eyes widened. For free? He smiled. In exchange, I'd like your honest opinion about the resort. No contracts, no pressure, just professional feedback. For the first time that day, someone had treated me with kindness. I looked down at the business card. It felt unreal. Just minutes earlier, I'd believed my vacation was ruined. Now, a complete stranger was offering me more respect than my own family ever had. I smiled for the first time since arriving. I'd be honored. Mr. Foster stood and extended his hand again. Welcome to Ocean Crest Resort, Miss Bennett. As I followed him toward the private elevator, I glanced through the lobby windows. Outside, my family laughed together while unloading beach bags, completely unaware of where I had gone. Rachel looked around once, probably expecting me to come back begging for help. Instead, the elevator doors closed, and at that exact moment, my vacation finally became my own. As the elevator doors opened, I stepped into the most beautiful suite I'd ever seen. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Atlantic Ocean. The afternoon sunlight reflected off the waves, filling the room with a warm golden glow. A welcome basket sat on the dining table with fresh fruit, chocolates, and a handwritten note. Welcome, Miss Bennett. We hope your stay is peaceful. Michael Foster. I smiled. Not because of the luxury, but because after everything that had happened downstairs, one stranger had shown me more kindness than my own family. I unpacked my suitcase, changed into a light summer dress, and stood on the balcony for several minutes, letting the salty breeze calm my thoughts. Then, my phone buzzed. It was the family group chat. Rachel had sent a picture. Everyone was standing beside the infinity pool with tropical drinks in their hands. The caption read, "Best family vacation ever." I stared at the screen. No one had asked where I was. No one wondered if I'd found a room. Not even my mother. A few seconds later, another message appeared. Ethan, dinner at the Sunset Grill tonight, 7 p.m. I smiled sadly. Not a single message said, Claire, are you okay? I placed the phone face down on the table. If they didn't care where I wasn't going to chase people who had already decided I didn't matter. That evening, I made my own plans. I walked along the quiet shoreline as the sun slowly disappeared behind the horizon. Children laughed while building sandcastles. Couples strolled hand in hand. Live music drifted from a nearby beach cafe. For the first time in months, I felt peaceful. Not because my family had changed, but because I had stopped expecting them to. As I was about to return to the resort, I noticed someone calling my name. Miss Bennett? I turned around. It was Michael Foster. He was walking toward me with 2 cups of coffee. I thought you might enjoy this. He handed me one. Thank you. The two of us sat on a wooden bench overlooking the ocean. For a few moments, neither of us spoke. Then Michael smiled. You know, I've worked in hospitality for almost 30 years. I've seen business partners fight. I've seen couples cancel weddings. I've even seen siblings argue over inheritances. But today, he looked out at the waves. I've never seen a family arrive together while pretending one member didn't exist. His words hit harder than I expected. I lowered my eyes. I kept asking myself what I did wrong. Michael shook his head. Sometimes, the wrong people convince good people they're the problem. Silence settled between us again. Finally, I asked the question that had been haunting me all day. Do you think they did it on purpose? Michael didn't answer immediately. Instead, he took a slow sip of coffee. I don't know your family, but I do know this. Reservations don't accidentally leave out one person's name. His calm voice confirmed what my heart had already accepted. It had never been a mistake. Someone had made a choice, and everyone else had gone along with it. Later that night, as I returned to my suite, I glanced toward the resort restaurant. Inside, my family was laughing over dinner. Rachel was taking selfies. Ethan was raising a toast. My mother smiled, as if nothing unusual had happened. An empty chair sat at the end of the table. No one seemed to notice. No one had saved it for me. I stood there for a few seconds, then quietly turned away. Back in my suite, I opened my laptop. If I was going to spend 5 days at Ocean Crest Resort, I wasn't going to waste them feeling sorry for myself. I began writing detailed notes about the resort's design, guest experience, and renovation ideas, just as I'd promised Michael. Outside my window, the waves crashed gently against the shore. Inside my room, something else was beginning. Not revenge, not anger, a new chapter. One where I stopped waiting for my family's approval and started building a life that didn't depend on it. The next 3 days passed differently than I had imagined. While my family spent every morning racing to reserve pool chairs, arguing over dinner reservations, and posting carefully edited vacation photos online, I spent mine walking through Ocean Crest Resort with a notebook in my hand. I studied everything: the lobby layout, the beachfront restaurant, the outdated guest rooms, even the lighting in the hallways. The more I observed, the more ideas came to me. As an architect, I couldn't stop seeing possibilities. On the 4th morning, Michael Foster met me in the lobby. "I've read the first part of your report," he said, with an impressed smile. "I wasn't expecting something this detailed." I laughed softly. "I probably wrote more than you asked for." "That's exactly why I like it." He handed me a visitor's badge. "I'd like to show you something." Curious, I followed him through a staff-only hallway and into a section of the resort that guests never saw. The elevator stopped on the top floor. When the doors opened, I found myself inside a massive, unfinished penthouse. Construction materials were stacked everywhere. Blueprints covered a long conference table. Large windows overlooked miles of sparkling ocean. Michael spread the blueprints across the table. "This is our biggest renovation project. It starts in 2 months. I slowly examined the drawings. The layout felt wrong. The guest flow made no sense. The suites wasted valuable ocean views. The rooftop restaurant blocked natural sunlight. Without thinking, I picked up a pencil. "Can I?" Michael smiled. "Go ahead." For nearly an hour, I sketched. I shifted walls, expanded balconies, moved the restaurant, redesigned the lobby entrance, created larger family suites, added panoramic glass corridors facing the ocean. When I finally looked up, Michael was staring at me in silence. I hope I didn't overstep. He shook his head slowly. No. You just solved 3 problems my design team has been arguing about for 6 months. I blinked. What? He pointed toward my sketches. Your layout is smarter. Guests would spend more time in shared spaces. The ocean becomes the centerpiece, and construction costs actually decrease. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Michael smiled. Claire, I'd like to introduce you to someone. An hour later, I found myself sitting in a private boardroom with 3 executives from the resort's ownership company. They asked about my career, my design philosophy, my previous projects. They carefully reviewed every sketch I'd drawn. Finally, one of them closed the folder. We've been searching for an outside consultant. He looked directly at me. Would you be interested in leading the redesign of Ocean Crest Resort? My heart nearly stopped. This project, it's worth nearly $2 million. I honestly thought I'd misheard him. I'm sorry. Did you say? Michael smiled. They're offering you the contract. For several seconds, I couldn't speak. 4 days earlier, I had arrived believing my family had ruined my vacation. Now, the same vacation was placing the biggest opportunity of my entire career directly in front of me. I signed nothing that afternoon. Instead, I asked for time to review everything carefully. As I left the meeting room, my phone vibrated. Rachel. Where have you been all day? Mom says we haven't seen you once. I stared at the message. After everything. After leaving me without a room. After pretending I didn't exist. Now they wanted to know where I was. I smiled. Not because I wanted revenge, but because for the first time in years, their opinion no longer mattered. I slipped my phone back into my pocket without replying. Outside, the ocean stretched endlessly toward the horizon. A few days ago, I thought I'd come here to save a family vacation. Instead, I had unknowingly walked into the opportunity that would change the rest of my life forever. The next morning, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. 6 missed calls, 11 text messages, 3 voicemails. Every single one was from my family. It was strange. For 4 days, they had barely noticed I existed. Now, suddenly they couldn't stop trying to reach me. I wasn't in a hurry to answer. Instead, I finished breakfast on the balcony while reviewing the renovation proposal Ocean Crest's executives had emailed the night before. It still didn't feel real. A project worth nearly $2 million. Not because someone pitied me, but because they believed in my work. As I signed the final page of the proposal, there was a knock on my suite door. When I opened it, Rachel stood there. For the first time in years, she looked nervous. There you are. I've been calling you all morning. I folded my arms. I noticed. She forced a laugh. Can I come in? No. The smile disappeared from her face. We need to talk. I don't think we do. Rachel sighed dramatically. Claire. You're seriously still upset about the room? I stared at her. Still upset? You left me without a place to stay. You lied to my face for 3 months. And now you're acting like I'm overreacting. Rachel rolled her eyes. It wasn't that big of a deal. We figured you'd just book another room. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You figured I'd spend $5,000 because you couldn't tell me the truth? Before Rachel could answer, the elevator doors opened again. This time, it was Ethan. Our mother followed close behind. Mom stepped forward with tears already forming in her eyes. Claire. I hate seeing this family fighting. I looked at her quietly. Then why didn't you say anything at the reception desk? She froze. I didn't want to ruin the vacation. I smiled sadly. So ruining mine was easier. No one answered. The hallway became painfully quiet. Finally, Ethan cleared his throat. Look, we all made a mistake. Can we just move on? I shook my head. No. A mistake happens by accident. What you did was a decision. Rachel crossed her arms. Fine. What do you want us to say? I looked directly at her. I wanted honesty. I wanted one person to say, Claire, we were wrong. Again. Silence. Not one of them could say it. Just then, another voice echoed down the hallway. Miss Bennett? We all turned around. It was Michael Foster. Standing beside him were the 3 executives I'd met the previous day. One of them smiled warmly. We finalized everything. He handed me a leather folder. We're excited to officially welcome you as the lead architectural consultant for the Ocean Crest renovation project. My family stared in complete disbelief. Rachel blinked several times. Consultant? Ethan frowned. What renovation project? The executive continued. The total project value is just under $2 million. We were extremely impressed by Miss Bennett's vision. We believe she'll completely transform this resort. No one spoke. Mom looked at me, then at the folder, then back at me again. Rachel's confident expression completely disappeared. You got hired? Michael smiled proudly. We didn't hire her because she was a guest. We hired her because she's exceptionally talented. The words hung in the air like thunder. For years, my family had treated me like I was the least successful person in the room. Now complete strangers were recognizing the value they'd never bothered to see. The executives congratulated me once more before walking toward the elevators. Michael shook my hand. I'll see you this afternoon for the planning meeting. Congratulations again. As they walked away, my family remained completely silent. Then Rachel quietly asked the question she'd never imagined she'd have to ask. Claire, can you help Ethan? I frowned. What do you mean? She hesitated. Ethan's construction company has been struggling. If you're working on a project this big, maybe you could recommend him. I looked at all 3 of them, only yesterday. They hadn't cared whether I had a bed to sleep in. Today, they needed a favor. I took a slow breath. Then I smiled politely. I'm sorry. I don't mix family with business. For the first time, they understood exactly how it felt to hear the word. No. 3 weeks passed after I returned home from Ocean Crest Resort. Life moved faster than I had ever imagined. Every morning, I joined video conferences with the resort's executive team. Architects, engineers, and designers from across the country listened as I presented my renovation plans. The project had officially begun. For the first time in my career, people weren't overlooking my ideas. They were building them. One Friday afternoon, I stood inside my downtown office, reviewing blueprints when my assistant knocked gently on the door. Claire, you have visitors. I don't have any appointments. She hesitated. They said they're family. My stomach tightened. I already knew who it was. When I stepped into the reception area, there they were, Mom, Rachel, Ethan. They looked nothing like they had at the resort. The confidence was gone. Rachel clutched a folder tightly against her chest. Mom looked exhausted. Ethan couldn't even meet my eyes. For several awkward seconds, nobody spoke. Finally, Mom broke the silence. Claire, we owe you an apology. I remained standing. I'm listening. Rachel took a deep breath. I was jealous. The words surprised even Ethan. She continued, "You've always been independent. You never needed anyone. When I found out you were doing better than I thought, I started comparing my life to yours. So, when I planned the vacation, I convinced myself you deserved to be left out." Her voice cracked. "It sounds horrible now. It was horrible then." I didn't interrupt. For years, I'd waited to hear the truth. Now it was finally here. Ethan stepped forward. I knew what Rachel was doing. I should have stopped her. I didn't. "I'm sorry." Then Mom spoke. "As your mother, I failed you the most. I kept quiet because I wanted everyone to get along. But silence protected the people who hurt you, not the daughter who needed me." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "I'll regret that for the rest of my life." The room became quiet, not because I had nothing to say, but because apologies don't erase memories. Rachel slowly placed the folder on my desk. "We're not here just to apologize." I looked at the folder. Inside were financial statements, loan notices, past due bills. Ethan's construction company was weeks away from bankruptcy. Rachel's business had lost several major clients. Mom's retirement savings had been used trying to keep everyone afloat. Rachel looked down. "We're desperate." There it was, the real reason they'd come. Not just guilt. Need. She swallowed hard. "We know you're leading the Ocean Crest project. If there's any way Ethan's company could be considered as a subcontractor, we'd be grateful." The room fell silent. 3 weeks earlier, I had stood alone at a hotel reception desk while they watched without helping me. Now, they stood in my office asking for mine. I slowly closed the folder. Then I looked at each of them. "I forgive you." Their faces lit up with hope. Before anyone could speak, I continued, "But forgiveness isn't the same as trust." The smiles disappeared. I can't award contracts because someone is family. I owe that responsibility to every company competing fairly. Ethan lowered his head. "I understand. If your company is qualified, you can apply like everyone else. The decision will be based on merit, not blood." Nobody argued, because deep down, they knew that was exactly how it should have been from the beginning. As they prepared to leave, Mom turned back one last time. "I'm proud of you, Claire." I smiled gently. "Thank you." "I just wish you'd said that before I had to prove it." Mom wiped away another tear. "So do I." They quietly walked toward the elevator. This time, I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel victorious. I simply felt free, because the greatest revenge had never been making my family suffer. It had been building a life where I no longer needed their approval. 6 months later, Ocean Crest Resort officially reopened. What had once been an aging beachfront hotel had become one of the most talked about luxury destinations on the East Coast. Travel magazines called it the most breathtaking resort transformation of the year. Tourism websites praised its modern architecture. Business journals highlighted the record-breaking increase in bookings. And for the first time in my career, my name appeared in every article. Lead architect, Claire Bennett. Standing on the rooftop terrace during the grand reopening, I looked across the endless blue ocean, the same ocean I had stared at 6 months earlier, wondering why my own family had abandoned me. Now, it reminded me how quickly life could change when you stopped chasing people who refused to value you. Michael Foster walked over with 2 glasses of sparkling cider. "I had a feeling you'd be standing here." I laughed. "You know me too well." He handed me a glass. "You earned this." Below us, hundreds of guests celebrated. Reporters interviewed executives. Investors toured the property. The renovation had exceeded every expectation. One of the owners stepped onto the stage. He tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we end tonight's celebration, we'd like to recognize one person whose vision made this transformation possible." A giant screen behind him lit up. Photos of the old resort slowly faded into images of the redesigned property. Then, my picture appeared. The audience erupted into applause. I wasn't expecting it. For a moment, I simply stood there. The owner smiled. Claire Bennett didn't just redesign this resort. She reminded us that great ideas come from people who refuse to give up after being underestimated. I walked onto the stage. The applause continued. Looking out at hundreds of strangers celebrating my success, I realized something. Not one of them knew the pain that had brought me here. They only saw the result. And maybe that was enough. As the ceremony ended, my assistant approached me. "You have one more guest." I turned toward the entrance. My mother stood there alone. She wasn't dressed for the gala. She wasn't carrying flowers. She simply smiled. "I wasn't sure if you'd want to see me." I walked over and hugged her. For the first time in years, the hug felt genuine. "I almost didn't come," she admitted, "but I couldn't let another important day pass without telling you something." She looked around the beautiful resort, then back at me. "I've spent my whole life believing family automatically deserved loyalty." She shook her head. "I was wrong. Loyalty has to be earned. And so does trust." Tears filled her eyes. "I'm proud of the woman you've become." This time, I believed her. We stood together for a few quiet moments before she whispered, "I don't expect everything to go back to the way it was." I smiled gently. "It won't." "But that doesn't mean we can't build something better." She nodded. "I'd like that." Later that night, after everyone had left, I returned to the same balcony where I'd stood on my first evening at Ocean Crest. The waves sounded exactly the same. The breeze felt exactly the same. Only one thing had changed: me. 6 months earlier, I believed losing a hotel room was the worst thing that could happen. Now I understood. Sometimes the door that closes isn't your punishment, it's your protection. If my family had booked that room, I never would have met Michael. I never would have toured the unfinished penthouse. I never would have earned the biggest opportunity of my career. Life hadn't been working against me. It had quietly been working for me. As I looked across the moonlit ocean, I smiled to myself, because I finally understood a lesson that no vacation could ever teach. Sometimes, the people who leave you behind unknowingly push you toward the life you were always meant to have. I took one last look at the ocean, turned around, and walked confidently into my future.